The moment James looks at Ruby, everything changes. Not because he says something big, not because he makes a promise, but because his silence feels heavier than ever before. There is something different in his eyes this time. Not fear, not anger. Something deeper. Something final. And in that quiet moment, one question hangs in the air like a secret waiting to explode. Is James really ready to ask Ruby to spend her life with him? James has never been the kind of person who plans for the future. He lived fast, made reckless choices, and believed that love was something that always ended in pain. But now, after everything he and Ruby have survived, the idea of losing her feels more terrifying than anything else he has faced. The world around him has changed, and so has he. For the first time, James is not running from responsibility. He is standing still, thinking and realizing that love is not about control or escape. It is about choosing someone every single day, even when fear is screaming inside your chest. The weight of that realization follows him everywhere, from quiet hallways to late nights where sleep never comes. He keeps replaying moments with Ruby, wondering if love like this deserves a promise, or if making one will destroy what they have built. Ruby, on the other hand, feels the shift before James ever says a word. She senses it in the way he looks at her, in the way his voice softens when he says her name. But her heart is torn. She has fought too hard for her independence to give it up easily. She remembers every moment she had to be strong alone, every time she chose herself over comfort. The idea of a future with James is beautiful, but it also scares her. Love once broke her, and she refuses to let it define her again. As James grows closer, Ruby begins to wonder if love can exist without sacrifice, or if choosing him means losing herself all over again. The world around them does not make things easier. Expectations, family pressure, and unspoken rules surround them at every step. James feels the weight of a legacy he never asked for, while Ruby feels the eyes of everyone watching her every move. Their relationship is no longer just theirs. It has become something others want to shape and control. In the middle of all this chaos, a single question hangs between them, unspoken but powerful. Is love enough when everything else is trying to pull you apart? As the season moves forward, every moment becomes heavier, every look more meaningful. The idea of a proposal stops being a fantasy and starts feeling like a turning point that could change everything. For James, it is a chance to prove he is no longer running from who he is. For Ruby, it is a moment that could redefine her future forever. What started as a simple connection now stands on the edge of something life-changing. And as the truth comes closer, one thing becomes clear. This season will not be about whether they love each other, but whether love is strong enough to survive what comes next. James begins to change in ways no one around him expects. It is not loud or dramatic. It happens quietly, in small moments that most people would miss. He starts waking up earlier, thinking longer, questioning his own choices instead of blaming the world. The boy who once acted without care now feels the weight of every decision. He is no longer chasing excitement or trying to prove his worth. Instead, he is trying to understand who he is without the noise, without the expectations placed on his name. This change scares him more than anything he has faced before, because growth means facing truths he spent years avoiding. Every step forward feels like walking into unknown ground, but for the first time, he does not turn away. Ruby notices this shift long before James ever speaks about it. She sees it in his silence, in the way he listens instead of reacting, in the way his eyes search for answers instead of escape. But her heart does not celebrate right away. She has learned the hard way that change can disappear just as quickly as it arrives. She remembers every promise that once sounded real and every moment when hope turned into disappointment. So even as James grows closer, Ruby keeps a part of herself guarded. She wants to believe in him, but trust does not come easily when it has been broken before. Her mind keeps asking the same question, is this growth real, or just another phase that will fade when things get hard? Their connection becomes deeper, but also more fragile. Simple moments now carry heavy meaning. A look lasts longer than it should. Silence feels louder than words. When they are together, it feels like the world pauses, but when they are apart, doubt slowly fills the space between them. James wants to prove that he is serious, that he is ready to build something real. But he struggles to express what he feels because fear still controls part of his heart. He worries that one wrong move could push Ruby away forever. So he holds back, even when every part of him wants to speak. Meanwhile, pressure begins to grow around them. Expectations from family, reputation, and the world they live in start closing in. James feels pulled in different directions, torn between who he was raised to be and who he wants to become. Ruby feels the weight of being watched, judged, and measured against standards she never agreed to follow. Their relationship becomes more than just two people in love. It turns into a test of strength, patience, and honesty. Every decision feels heavier than before, as if the future depends on every word they choose to say or not say. As emotions build, both of them reach a quiet breaking point. They realize that love alone is not enough without courage. James must decide whether he is brave enough to fully step into the life he wants, even if it means losing control. Ruby must decide whether she can open her heart again without losing herself in the process. Their story moves forward not with loud drama, but with slow, powerful tension that grows stronger with every passing moment. And deep down, both of them sense that something life-changing is coming. Something that will force them to choose between fear and faith. Between holding on and letting go. The distance between them grows quieter but heavier, like a storm forming without thunder. James begins to feel the pressure of everything he has avoided for years pressing against his chest. It is no longer just about love or fear. It is about responsibility. Every choice he makes now carries weight. Every word he says to Ruby feels permanent. He starts to realize that love is not proven through grand gestures, but through consistency, patience, and the willingness to stay when things are uncomfortable. This realization changes how he sees himself. The reckless version of him no longer fits the life forming in front of him. Yet letting go of that identity feels like losing a part of who he once was. Ruby senses the shift too, but she remains careful. She has learned that emotional safety does not come from promises, but from actions repeated over time. She watches James closely, not to judge him, but to understand him. She sees his struggle, the way he fights himself every day to be better, and it softens her heart. Still, doubt lingers quietly in the background. She wonders if loving him means accepting uncertainty as a permanent part of her life. The idea both excites and terrifies her. Love feels deeper now, but also more dangerous, because walking away would hurt far more than before. As their connection deepens, old wounds resurface. Conversations become more honest, sometimes painfully so. They talk about fears they never shared, about mistakes they wish they could erase. James admits that he is afraid of failing again, not just at love, but at becoming the man he wants to be. Ruby admits that she is afraid of losing herself inside someone else's expectations. These confessions do not bring instant comfort, but they create something stronger understanding. In these moments, their bond becomes less about passion and more about truth. Outside pressure continues to close in. People around them begin to notice the change, to question their choices, to judge their future. The weight of opinions, family expectations, and unspoken rules starts to shape their reality. James feels pulled between proving himself to the world and protecting what he has with Ruby. She, on the other hand, feels the constant push to fit into a version of life that does not fully belong to her. Their relationship becomes a quiet act of rebellion against everything trying to define them. As time moves forward, both of them begin to realize that love is not something that saves you. It is something that challenges you. It forces you to face the parts of yourself you try to hide. For James, that means stepping into responsibility without fear. For Ruby, it means trusting that vulnerability does not equal weakness. Together, they stand at the edge of a choice that will change everything. Not because they are ready, but because love demands courage even when certainty is impossible. The silence between them begins to feel heavier than any argument they have ever had. It is no longer filled with anger or confusion, but with unspoken truths waiting to surface. James feels it every time he looks at Ruby and sees the question in her eyes, not about love, but about certainty. He knows she is waiting for something real, something that proves this is more than another chapter that will eventually close. The pressure does not come from her words, but from his own fear of failing again. For the first time, he understands that love is not about saying the right things. It is about standing still when everything inside you wants to run. Ruby, meanwhile, begins to see parts of James she never noticed before. The quiet moments reveal more than all their past arguments combined. She sees the way he pauses before speaking, choosing honesty over charm. She notices how he listens now, truly listens, as if her thoughts matter more than his own pride. Yet even as her trust begins to rebuild, fear shadows every step forward. She has learned that love can be beautiful and painful at the same time. The closer she gets, the more she worries about what she might lose if everything falls apart again. As their bond deepens, the outside world becomes louder. Expectations press in from every direction, demanding decisions and clarity. Friends question their future. Family opinions weigh heavily on their choices. Every conversation feels like a test of loyalty and strength. James feels torn between proving himself worthy and staying true to who he is becoming. Ruby feels trapped between protecting her heart and embracing a future that scares her more than being alone ever did. Neither of them knows which path leads to peace. There are moments when everything feels fragile, as if one wrong word could shatter what they are trying to build. Small disagreements carry emotional weight, and silence becomes dangerous. Yet in those fragile moments, something unexpected happens. Instead of walking away, they stay. They listen. They choose patience over pride. Each difficult conversation brings them closer to understanding that love is not meant to be perfect, only honest. As time passes, the idea of forever begins to take shape in quiet ways. Not through dramatic promises, but through shared mornings, unspoken support, and the comfort of knowing someone is choosing you every day. James begins to see a future that does not terrify him. Ruby starts to believe that love does not have to cost her independence. Together, they stand on the edge of something life-changing, knowing that the next step will define everything that comes after. The question is no longer whether they love each other. It is whether they are brave enough to build a life around that love. The moment arrives quietly, without any grand announcement or dramatic build-up. It comes in the stillness between conversations, in the pause that lingers after everything important has already been said. James feels it before he understands. The calm certainty replacing the chaos that once ruled his thoughts. For the first time in his life, he is not running from the future. He is standing still, facing it, accepting that whatever comes next will be shaped by the choices he makes now. This realization does not bring fear. It brings clarity. Ruby senses the shift immediately. There is something different in the way James looks at her, something steady and grounded. It is not the intensity of passion or the thrill of uncertainty that once defined their connection. It is deeper than that. It is commitment without pressure, affection without conditions. She feels her guard slowly lowering, not because she feels forced, but because she finally feels safe. The walls she built to protect herself begin to soften brick by brick as she allows herself to imagine a future that once felt too fragile to hold. Their conversations grow quieter, but more meaningful. They speak less about what they want and more about who they want to be. James talks about responsibility not as a burden, but as a choice he is ready to make. Ruby talks about independence, not as distance, but as strength shared between two people who walk side by side. Together, they begin to understand that love is not about losing oneself, but about growing alongside someone who respects who you are becoming. The world around them continues to move, but its noise fades into the background. Expectations no longer define their decisions. Instead, they create their own rules, guided by trust and mutual understanding. For the first time, they are not trying to prove anything to anyone else. They are simply choosing each other, quietly and intentionally. This choice carries weight, but it also brings peace. As the days pass, the idea of a future together no longer feels distant or unrealistic. It becomes something real, something they can almost touch. James begins to imagine a life built on stability instead of chaos. Ruby begins to believe that love does not have to demand sacrifice of self to survive. In each other, they find balance, a partnership built not on fear, but on respect and emotional honesty. By the time the moment arrives, it does not feel rushed or forced. It feels earned. Everything they have faced, every doubt and setback, has led them here. Standing on the edge of a new beginning, they understand that love is not a dramatic gesture or a perfect promise. It is a quiet decision made every day, and as they look toward what comes next, they know that whatever the future holds, they will face it together, not because they have to, but because they choose to. Time moves forward in ways neither of them expects. There is no sudden explosion of emotion, no dramatic turning point that announces everything has changed. Instead, life continues quietly, shaped by small decisions that slowly redefine what their future looks like. James and Ruby begin to understand that love is not a single moment, but a series of choices made every day. Each morning, they wake up with the same question in their hearts, not whether they love each other, but whether they are willing to keep choosing each other even when it is difficult. James starts to see the world differently. The things that once pulled him toward chaos no longer hold the same power. He becomes more present, more intentional, and more aware of the impact his actions have on the people around him. Responsibility no longer feels like a trap, but a path toward becoming the man he has always wanted to be. He realizes that commitment does not take away freedom. It gives it meaning. With every decision, he learns that strength is not about control, but about consistency. Ruby, in her own quiet way, undergoes a transformation just as deep. She begins to trust the stability she once feared. Where she once expected disappointment, she now allows herself to feel hope. The walls she built to survive start to feel less necessary, and she learns that protecting her heart does not mean shutting others out. Her confidence grows not from independence alone, but from knowing she can stand beside someone without losing herself. She discovers that vulnerability, when chosen freely, can be a source of strength rather than weakness. Their relationship evolves into something grounded and real. There are no dramatic declarations, no need for grand promises. Instead, there is consistency. There is presence. There is the quiet comfort of knowing someone will be there even on the days when love feels heavy. They learn how to listen without interrupting, how to support without controlling, and how to give space without drifting apart. These small, everyday moments become the foundation of something lasting. As time passes, the idea of a future together no longer feels like a question waiting to be answered. It feels like a path they are already walking. The fears that once stood between them begin to fade, replaced by understanding and trust. They are no longer driven by fear of loss, but by the desire to grow together. What once seemed uncertain now feels steady, even inevitable. In the end, their story is not about grand gestures or perfect timing. It is about two people choosing growth over comfort, honesty over fear, and love over pride. The journey they share is not flawless, but it is real. And in that quiet certainty, they find something far more powerful than a promise. They find a future they are ready to face together.